This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. All right, guys, we've got a very special guest on the podcast today. His name is Colonel Paris Davis. So he is a retired and highly decorated veteran of the United States Army Special Forces, otherwise known as Green Berets. He served in Korea, and then he saw combat during the Vietnam War. So he was first nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor in 1965 after the battle in Binh Dinh Provence. It was Bong Song in Vietnam. And he was not awarded the medal until March 3rd of 2023. So he is the author of the new book that I've got right here, Every Weapon I Had, A Vietnam Vet's Long Road to the Medal of Honor. And so the thing about this interview today is, you're talking to a guy that has seen some incredible things, and you've got this super detailed autobiography where it gets into his upbringing, how he, goes to school, and then he gets into the military and kind of what these deployments look like. And we just couldn't get to all of it. I mean, I had so many questions for him, and we just didn't really have the time today. And there is as an aside, there is a mild explicit language warning, especially towards the end. So for anyone listening with little ears, just keep that in mind. But the thing with Colonel Davis that I thought was so interesting is, especially, middle to the end of the interview, you can see he's going off on a lot of diatribes about a lot of different subjects, because you can see he's just firing and thinking of this story and how it attaches to this story and how it attaches to that story. But it was easy for me to follow because I've read the book. So this might be one where you actually read the book a little bit, or, go through the book, Every Weapon I Had, before you actually listen to this interview. But we do get into the exact mission where he ended up saving 3 people off the battlefield whenever his commanding officer had commanded him to leave the battlefield. So he went against his commander's wishes to stay on the battlefield to save 3 men. And it was those actions that he did that, led to him eventually getting the Medal of Honor. And in the book, it goes into all the detail about, kind of what happened to his Medal of Honor packet and why it took so long and how he should have got it, decades before he did, but how he did eventually get it. But I did want to read this one quote because it gives us an idea as to, okay, where do we even get the title for this book? And it'll kind of give you a sense of what this guy lived through and what he did. By mid-morning, we had been out here for about 4 hours trying to avoid being overrun. I had fought in every way possible that morning, with my rifle and my fists, with grenades and the butt of my rifle. I used every weapon I had. I wasn't sure how many Kong I had killed that morning, but I was certain there would be more. So guys, without further ado, let's get into it. Colonel Paris Davis, welcome to Undaunted.Life, a Man's podcast.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate it.
Well, I've been very excited to get into this interview for a while because I read your book, so it's actually fantastic, guys. It's a new book. It's out now. Guys, check out the show notes. Every Weapon I Had. And so the subtitle is A Vietnam Vet's Long Road to the Medal of Honor. And guys, we're going to get into all of that. But I don't know, growing up in Cleveland, if you ever thought you'd be an author, right? Published with a major publishing house or something like that. So we'll get into the details of your life in the book here in a little bit, but let's just talk about the process of getting your life down on paper.
Okay, good. Well, there were a lot of things that happened in my life, especially with special forces. I got a chance to write a letter to Kennedy, who was president was going to be president, telling him that I read his article in the paper, but there wasn't a lot of detail, and that I'd like to throw my name in the hat to being a part of that if that's possible. I didn't get a reply. I did get a letter from the Department of the Army saying that I was going to IOBC school, Infantry Officers Basic School, and that's at Fort Benning, Georgia. And that happened, and they gave me a time to be there and who was going to meet me, so forth and so on. All that came to pass, and so, it just went on from there. There were a couple of NCOs that were there to see me and wanted to find out who I was, so forth and so on. When they got my name and so forth and so on, they put me in the system.
Well, and it's very interesting because, your book it's certainly an autobiography, but it's also a history book. And so being able to see kind of the generation of these things, and at the time you didn't know you were becoming part of history with Vietnam and MACV-SOG and the Green Berets and things like that. But I do want to go back to something because I'm kind of interested in what makes people tick And there's a lot of leadership lessons in this book as well. You just talking about what it was like to lead your men, downrange and in combat. But you talked about, growing up in Cleveland, that your brother Barney, he was arrested, he was tried for murder, convicted, and it was actually sentenced to death and executed. And there's just a very poignant line in the book. It just says, "There's no doubt that Barney's death changed my life." And so, in terms of so what specifically do you mean? Did it change the trajectory of your life? Did it just change what life meant to you because you realized in that moment, your life can be taken from you, in an instant? Was that kind of what you were going with?
Sort of. Let me tell you where I think I was dealing, where this whole thing started. When my brother would get into trouble with other people, he would always say, and you have to excuse my English, "I'm going to have my little brother come here and kick your ass."
Yeah.
That was me. I was in more fights than Joe Louis. And, the whole thing is, once he puts you in the ring, there's nowhere to run except towards the enemy.
That's right.
And so it was one of these things. A lot of times I handle myself well, and there were times when the enemy was more prone to be bigger than me, this, that, and the other. And so the whole thing is, you go in there, you say a little prayer, and you hope for the best. Sometimes you got it, other times it might be even, and then so forth and so on. And I just learned that the one thing that you have to be in a situation like that with my brother is to tell the truth.
Mm.
The truth never moves. And when you're in a situation like that, and he's saying, "Okay, you're on your own. This guy wants to take care of me. Well, and instead, you're going to take care of him." And that talk like that. And I just sort of ate that up. I knew that I was probably a little bit over my head when I was in a situation like that. But you do the best you can with what you got. And that's the army saying. You go to war with what you have, and go from there. And that's just the way it was. And I didn't make that an excuse for win, losing, or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is, love my brothers and sister, and the fact is, it was a Davis name that he was really putting out there, win, lose, or whatever. And so you don't have a choice,
Mm.
and so you get out there and you try to move the best you can with what you got. And look, the one thing I learned about that whole thing is, when you're in a situation like that, you want to find the opening,
Mm.
whatever that is, that you can have an advantage over him. That's where you want to go. And if it's moving, if it's jabbing, whatever it might be, that gives you an advantage, that's where you want to go. And I used to carry that with me in the special forces too. If we're out there fighting and we see where there's a movement one way, and let me give you an
Mm.
example. We were coming into um, a situation with the enemy, and it was going to be a fight. And the one thing I wanted to do, I took another 15 minutes to move around him, so he had the sun in his eyes, and I had the shade behind me. Follow me? And
Yeah.
that's taking advantage of something that you can control if you can get him to move the way you wanted him to. And so it was little things like that, not big things, but just little things that gave you an advantage for maybe about 15 or 20 minutes. And if you can do that, then you've got a chance of winning.
Well, Colonel Davis, I mean, when you look at your early life, growing up, some things that you experienced and went through, you have to cultivate resilience or you simply won't make it. And so you're learning how to roll with the punches, or I love that quote, "The truth never moves." But there are certain times where the truth can be the truth, but if you're not resilient enough to stand up to it or stand even next to it, it's going to become really, really, it's going to be a bad situation for you. But for you, I'm curious because obviously, you went to school a little bit, but on June the 1st of 1959, you actually received a letter from the Southern ROTC. That was your commission into the United States Army. And so you did what most of the U.S. population has not done. You raised your right hand and you swore to protect this country from enemies, foreign and domestic. So for you, what was the decision-making process for, not only going into the military, but specifically the Army, and then we'll make our way to Special Forces?
Well, what happened there was that I did get to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
There were about somewhere between 16, somewhere between 12 and 16 guys that were in the same situation I was in. And that is, why am I here? What is going to happen? Who's in charge? All those kind of things that you find out about the military that you don't know. And the other thing is, the military in a situation like that, they're not nice to you. They come at you like you're zero, and they treat you that way until they can prove in their minds that you can handle yourself. Because the whole thing is you're in a situation where you're going to have to go to war one way or the other. And I can remember initially all the soldiers or will be soldiers that were there. They didn't take a liking to me. They were very cordial, very, very nice to me. But at the same time, they wanted to be part of the unit that was going to be making itself available. And once I got there, and they were my friends, I can remember the first time we had uh, how do I want to say, a sort of combat with each other. I can remember the guy that was my partner was about, I don't know, 6'2" or 6'3". We got into a boxing match and he busted my lip in about three or four places. I couldn't even speak to him for a while, so I get my lip all fixed up. And and he wasn't kind, because at that time everyone was trying to find a place. It's like trying to be on a basketball team, and everybody's better for you, so you want to take out the ball and you want to do this. You want to make friends as quickly as you can. And it was one of those situations. After the fact, after they sort of brought me into the group, and they one night I can remember we were very close to graduating, and a couple, three of them came and said, "Look, here's the deal. This isn't racism. I don't care what color you are, orange, green, whatever. The fact of the matter is, if you want to be in part of this organization, the one thing you have to have more than anything else is courage. And we've seen that you can do that. You can use it to your advantage. So you're one of the group now. We didn't even have a name. I mean, we were just running around together with no name or whatever. So you didn't have a sense that you have a part of anything, because nobody made you a part of anything. And the whole thing, the more we started training, I can remember one night, it was Kennedy who was doing this. He just came out and said, "I have a name for you. It's going to be Special Forces." Now, why is it special forces? Because I can't think of a damn thing else. And
Yeah.
so that's how it started. And we were over at the cemetery when he was in charge. And you remember the one thing when he died, the one thing that was available for us at that cemetery was how do I want to put this? A living situation about what he had tried to do to make us better, and that was a fire, and it was right by his grave and was lit all the time. You could walk by it day, night, rain, shine, and everybody knew what that fire was about. And so you come to grow towards things that you understand and away from things that you don't have any business knowing. And that's the other thing is when you get in a situation like that, the best thing you can do is keep your doggone mouth closed. When orders are being given, or this is being given, or that, you just listen. You listen for what they say and how they want you to do it. And once you get into that kind of situation, friendship comes towards you because others don't know either. And the more you can find people that you can talk to or be around that are part of the same unit you're a part of, it just works. It just works.
Colonel Davis, I remember, from reading the book, some people get this idea, civilians, they get this idea that in the military, it's all top down. It's always shut your mouth and just do exactly what I say. Now, certainly there are times like that, but as you described, as your leadership style and other things, you would welcome a lot of feedback to make sure that your ideology or your philosophy or your plans were the best ones for everyone involved. Because again, if mistakes can end up in body bags, as we've obviously seen throughout the history of military combat. But for you, eventually Vietnam becomes something that's, maybe no one even knew where Vietnam was on the map. And now all of a sudden everyone got real familiar with it because you had deployed to South Korea. You had done a few things, but at the end of 1962, you make your way to Vietnam. You were there for 6 months. I just want to talk about that first deployment because, we'll get into the subsequent deployments and some of those things. But were there any surprises during that first deployment? What was the op tempo like? Was there a lot of fighting at that time, or were we just kind of getting our feet wet in the conflict?
Well, the interesting thing, it was really late 1960. Okay, I had been accepted into the organization, but 60 is when Special Forces still started to come into its own. And the thing is, we were working groups. We had plans that we made for each other because we're still in a situation where the higher ups had not been made available to us. Everyone was watching us, but nobody was telling us what to do. They're letting us do it on our own. It's like being on a basketball court and everyone has a basketball and everybody wants to make sure it goes into the hoop.
Mm.
And if those that don't go in the hoop end up being the guys who are going to pass to the people that go in the hoop. It's just one of those things. You take what's available and you use it to your advantage. That's the way you have to do it. And when push comes to shove, you can't push, you can't shove. You got to do both of them.
Absolutely. And so you're in country, you get some experience there in Vietnam, and obviously we'll get to Thursday, June 17th of 1965 here in a moment. But let's talk about your second deployment to Vietnam. Leading up to that fateful day in June of 1965, was there anything different from first deployment to second deployment in Vietnam in terms of what you guys were doing kind of leading up to the conflict on that day?
Well, a lot. And let me tell you why. During the period there was about 3, 4 months or whatever it might be, and we were learning how to use our weapons and how to do this, how to do that. We made a lot more jumps out of airplanes that weren't really necessary, but it was just part of the how do you get paid. And one of the things you do to get paid in jump school is to make the jumps. And the
Yep.
other thing is the training of moving from point A to point B was really important because you had to do it with some stealth, some information that you could make up on your own to see if it worked or it didn't work, and the fact that you knew that there were areas in that jungle that no one had been to. I mean, there were times when a couple of guys actually sat on snakes and didn't realize it because the snakes were all balled up and we were tired. And I mean, it just worked out that way. But I tell you one thing: once we found out what a snake was, we made sure we moved in a different direction. And the whole thing is, once you start seeing things like that, the group responds. If they see a snake or something like that, they don't keep it to themselves. They allow you to know that because they're in danger too if something goes wrong and the snake can bite you and kill you or whatever it might be. So the whole thing is groups come together for different reasons. And the fact of the matter is, if you're out there in the middle of this or that or whatever it might be, whatever is available for you to help you, you're going to pass it on to others so that everyone has the same kind of advantage if we get into a fight. And that's how we started moving through the jungle and doing this, the weapons and all the other kind of things. It became a us thing, not a you thing, but a us thing, because there was all of us at the time were trying to figure out the best way of making this group work, because we didn't have a lot of people from higher up coming down to tell us. They were watching what we could do on our own. And that's one of the things that you find out, at least I did in special forces, and that is being the person who can handle yourself in a situation like that, and you can bring others along to help you. And if you think you're going to go out there and do it by yourself, then I tell you, it won't be push or shove. You'll just be out there by yourself, trying to think you can go through something without any help. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way.
Hey guys, real quick. I know a lot of you guys are really doing everything you can to have a consistent workout routine, but the problem is you work out at a Globo gym. And so there's 17 guys on the bench that you need, and there's people doing bicep curls on the squat rack. And the biggest problem is not your schedule. It's actually where you're trying to get your work in. How about you guys stop making excuses and build yourself a home gym? And when you do, make sure you use Sorinex. So Sorinex is a family-owned and operated business that builds some of the most impressive workout facilities in the entire world. They built gyms for teams in the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and even the UFC. They've also built gyms for some of the biggest and most successful collegiate and high school athletic programs in the country. But in addition to that, they make the highest quality home gym products that I've ever seen on the market. In my personal home gym, I have the Sorinex Outfitter Rack, the heavy version in military green. Also, I have some of their center mass bells. I've got their Nordic glute ham developer and their patented landmine attached to my rack. So guys, stop fighting the riffraff at your local gym or bench or squat rack or whatever. And if you're going to build out a home gym, you may as well get one that will last you and one that you could even pass down to your kids. Begin your build out by going to Sorinex.com. That is Sorinex.com, Sorinex.com. Take control of where and when you work out, Sorinex.com. Yeah, yes, sir. I'm reminded of some guys that are, kind of modern day warriors. And so these guys could be, whether it's Navy SEALs or Green Berets or Marine Recon or something like that. Some of these guys have built an entire platform based on themselves and their personalities and the things that they can do. And then when you talk to guys in the community, right, that they were with, whatever, branch or whatever group they were a part of, they're like, they have a terrible, reputation in that community.
Oh, yeah.
Because of what you just said. These were guys that were out for themselves. Everything they did was for themselves, to make themselves look better, to elevate their status. And that just doesn't work. And it especially would not have worked with MACV-SOG, with the Green Berets and the stuff that y'all were doing in Vietnam. And so I do want to go ahead and get on to Thursday, June the 17th of 1965. We're going to go through that day in a bit of detail, and we're going to use the book as the scaffolding for that. But Colonel Davis, if you wouldn't mind, please just set the scene for us. What was the plan for that day? Because things kind of started to go sideways pretty early the morning of that day. But go ahead and set the scene for us of what that day was supposed to look like, and then we'll get into what actually happened.
I had a team sergeant. His name was Wall, and he had an in with a lot of different agencies, especially the ones that had power to do things or to move things. Um, People that were there to make sure that we did our best. Here was the deal. When Wall came back from one of his meetings, because before we left Fort Benning, where Colonel Munger was our company commander, in Special Forces, we had a lieutenant colonel was our company commander, and he called me in and said, "Look, there's going to be 4 different units. The one you're going to have to really worry about and do the best you can with working with them is Wall. Wall has a a real good relationship with the CIA and some other and known units that had inside information about intelligence and so forth. He's going to be with you. He's going to be one of your people that's probably going to really give you a hard time because he's going to be able to move in and out without your knowing it. He's going to be able to do this, that, and the other, and you never know about it. There's going to be other people on the team, and they're going to wonder, why is this guy able to do this and you're not? And the fact of the matter is, one of the things you have to be able to do and to say, look, we're all one team. Maybe there's one guy who's getting information for us or against us. We need to have him where he needs to be. And once we got that into the heads of the other people on the team, it really worked. He came back and said, "I just have the information. We understand that we're going to be going." Uh, we had about 19 clicks, maybe 20 clicks from where our camp was where the Viet Cong were having their R&R. And so we knew that sooner or later that was going to be a time when, well, push comes to shove, and we are going to either push or shove, and vice versa for them. When Wall came back, he said, I just got some information from higher ups, and there's going to be an attack in about 2 days by the people, the Viet Cong that had come down. They were bringing their machine guns and stuff on bicycles because we didn't have anything better than that. And at that time, one thing became very available to me and some others, and that was that the French, who had been in charge of helping um, us fight the Viet Cong, had decided that they had gone to America and talked with the president. The president had given an okay that we could help them because the French said they'd had enough with them. And once that happened, it changed everything. We had a chance to uh, work with the Viet Cong, not the Viet Cong, but the people that were on our side. And once we were able to do that, everything started working a lot better. We trained with them, we did this with that, and everything else. And once that once that was apparent to everyone, the teams started working well together. And one of the things that the French had done with with what was going on in that part of the world is the fact that initially they really trained um, the people that were on our side to really do better than what they were doing. But at the same time, for some reason, there was a schism between um, the Viet Cong and all the other team people that were in different parts. For instance, the Russians and so forth and so on. There were twice in that short period of time when we were out there working and fighting. And the first time we ever saw one of the enemy who had a red beard and was in a tank, so forth. And when we reported it, everyone was really surprised that something like that could go on. And I said to myself, if they're the enemy, why are we surprised? And that gave me the idea that we need to be really quick to make decisions, right decisions, to make to look at what's around you and take that information and come up with what you wanted to do with it. And so all these, and I wasn't the only, there were others, and we just worked as a team. And if you had a better idea, we could run it around something, around the table or wherever we were, and see if that was going to help us to get better. And it did. And so when Wall came back and said he had information that in about 2 days, the Viet Cong were going to come after, we were going to have a major attack. And when that attack started, they were going to try to take over certain parts of Vietnam that they could handle and keep under their control. They had weapons and other things that were coming in via boats and other abilities to move things around with the people that were there. One of the things that I learned right from the beginning in Vietnam, the people that lived in that country, they were in charge. They were in charge because it's their country. They know what they want to do, and they know what they don't want to do. And part of the falling out between the French and Vietnam was the fact that the French wanted to do it their way, and Vietnam wanted to do it their way. And so there was a split, and that's when a couple of people from the French came to us and said, "We're having a problem. Do you think you can handle taking care of Vietnam and keeping them in the fold until we can come up with a way that they'll help us more and we can help them more." And that was the beginning, because it was 2 days later that we found out that we were on a march starting at about I don't know 1:30 in the morning, because we always fought at night, and it took us almost 2.5 hours to get to where we were going to be fighting in Bong Song, because that wasn't very far from our camp. And once all that stuff came into being, we were in a position. We were on the road to fighting the Viet Cong. They had about a battalion that we found out that were there. We did not know there was going to be almost a 3 or 4 times more of them than there were going to be of us. And so that's when we got to where we were supposed to be. We actually, two things happened there. Number one, we got into their camp, and it was about the middle of the night. And one of the, and I'll just do it as quickly as I can. One of the people that we woke up in the middle of that fight was this woman who was only thing she was wearing when she jumped up in the middle of the night was her bra, and she had a gun in the other hand, and she was trying to put on her bra and start fighting us at the same time. And that's when Wall took a shot at her, killed her, and the leader, the general there, he was really a colonel, saw me, and I got a shot off before he could get his off, and so the war was on, and it just lasted and lasted and lasted. And if you can imagine this, we had people on bases. I was at home plate. A Brown who had been shot in the head was at second base. Wall was on third base, and then Ronfeld was on the first base. So we had all the bases covered, at least the areas, and each of these areas had a platoon plus on there of troops that they had behind them, and so the war really sort of evolved from that. Uh, we were winning sometimes. We had already talked with the Navy, and they had taught us how to do naval call in a naval gunfire. We did the same thing with the um, artillery that we had that was available that we could use, and also there's a 105 fighter squadron was there. So all this was out there, and we used all that I just mentioned. The enemy used whatever it could um, come up with their spies and everything else, sabotaging any equipment and stuff that we had, and we would fire back to do it our way, as opposed to just let them go on and do what they wanted to do. So this war was really taking shape. It was almost like a little a war of during the World War II. You had all kinds of people on your side. They had all kinds of people on their side, and and God only knows how it was going to end up.
One, I think it's interesting how slowly you move in the autobiography through everything because you get to the mission, you have your first kill, and then things start to go sideways. You weren't exactly sure how many of them there were, and they didn't have any idea how small of a force that they were going against. But I want to read a couple of quotes from the book. As we pressed westward through the camp, flames billowed from the huts. From out of the smoke and noise, 4 more North Vietnamese soldiers charged at me. I used my rifle butt and my fist to fight back. I killed all of them. As I dashed between the buildings, I surprised more panicked North Vietnamese who still had no idea of the relatively paltry force they faced. I used my rifle, my fists, my rifle butt. I killed everything that came at me. And then, there was a quote a little bit later that in the hour since fighting broke out, you had killed 18 or 19 North Vietnamese. And at this point, this is such kinetic action in a very truncated period of time, right? And I'm just wondering what's going through your head at this point. Do you think, okay, at this point, we're an hour in, you've killed 18 or 19, there can't be that much more of them? Or were y'all pretty well aware that this was going to be a fairly serious, elongated fight? Was there any thought, okay, maybe we should get out of here, regroup, and come back in? At these early stages, what was the thought process for you?
Let me tell you where I was then. When we went to the camp, we had Vietnamese of all persuasion that were in the camp. One of the first things I did that first night was to sleep. We only had one way in and one way out. Was to sleep right at that doorway. And what I was trying to prove is the fact that if you're going to be on our side, we're going to protect you. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. But if we can do it, you can do it. And the whole thing was every time we would do something, I would make sure that I was there or someone that I sent to help out would be there. Because when you're in a country like that and people can see what you're doing, after about the second or third thing that happened, they know that they have to do it too. If you have to go across that field, they're going to have to go across that field. If you're going to have to do this, that, and the other, they better be prepared to do what they're saying, because that is what the way that you're going to have to go and fight together to be together if you're going to try to win this thing. And the whole thing is, let me show you, and then we can move together. And once we got into that, and became really good friends with the district chief, he had his lieutenant to be with me all the time. And a lot of the information that we used was because of the lieutenant that the district commander had given to be with me was always available. And we always would, if we had a big battle or something like that, and we could give them a carton of cigarettes or a this or that. We always made sure that the chief, and that's what I called him, who was in charge of the Vietnamese, knew about it. We gave him cigarettes and stuff like that, and some American dollars, and so he was on our side to help us do what really was necessary, and he never faltered. He when we were fighting, he was there. And one of the things that really bothered me about some of the writing, they never said that we had good troops. They said we had troops that were not trained. They were untrained troops and all that. They were trained, but others didn't know about it. And the fact of the matter is, I was really happy that most of the people that were on our side couldn't read English or whatever, so we could go ahead and move accordingly. But we got them into different formations when we were fighting or doing this or doing that, or out there trying to get information about where the enemy might be, because even though it was their part of the country, we had people from that part of the country too, and So you get some information about this, that, and the other. You had to weigh it, make a decision on what you wanted to do with it, and then go forward with what you had on your side. And so the whole thing was that because we knew what we were getting into, we had to really get to where Bong Song was, where the fighting was going to be, before they could bring in their other troops. We knew that they had maybe um, a small group, uh, a Viet Cong that was with them, but we knew that because we had gotten information that they were going to have it was going to be their R&R place, and they already had people that were building hooches and so forth and so on. When we got there, all this was going on, and I can remember the first part of that battle. Once we got there, they weren't really uh, sure of what we're going to if we were going to be there. Once we got there, we must have been into with grenades and whatever else explosives we had, going into about 30, 40 of those little hooches that they made for themselves or their teams. And I'm talking about the Viet Cong now. And we took advantage of going to those hooches, trying to drop grenades and everything else in it, and to lessen their ability to fight us back. But during that period of time, uh, more troops from the Viet Cong were coming down and were fighting, and so it really became a major battle.
Yeah, the battle kept escalating and escalating, and I want to go back to the book here and read this section. After he tossed the smoke grenade, I saw the red plumes billowing from the hut, but didn't realize that the spotter plane had taken fire. We had our hands full on the ground. Two North Vietnamese soldiers charged at me, and one threw a grenade. I got a shot off at the one who threw it, and he fell, and he got up with a knife. I shot him again, and then the grenade went off. After it detonated, I looked at my hand. The blast had blown off the top of my middle finger on my right hand and ripped open the tip of my index finger, my trigger finger. I saw the tip of my middle finger on the ground. I picked it up and put it in my pocket. I tasted blood in my mouth. I eventually realized that the explosion had knocked a tooth down my throat. I shat that tooth out later, a little bit later here. Blood was everywhere, mine, my attackers, and God knows who else's. Blood mixed with the sweat and soaked my uniform, and now we were caked in dirt and mud. The loss of my trigger finger was a problem. I needed to be able to fire a weapon, and I wasn't proficient with my left hand. I tried to wipe the blood from my hands and curled my injured fingers so I could use my pinky to pull the trigger. A kind of calm came over me. Something happens when you get wounded on the battlefield. There's no way to explain it. If your body is still working, you find that you can keep going in a way that you couldn't off the battlefield, even as the blood pours from your wounds and you find pieces of yourself no longer there. You keep going. So at this point, you had been through hard training. You had been through hard workups. You had been through, the equivalent of the Q course or whatever at the time. You had seen battle. Now you're wounded, right? And for for the overwhelming majority of the population on the planet that has not been wounded in battle before, we can't even fathom what that could be like. And so let's go back there and let's talk about, you've been in the battle, you've been in it for hours, you're exhausted, you've got all these things happening. Now you're wounded.
Okay, let me start right there. Can you see my hand?
Yes, sir.
You see the finger that's missing?
Yeah.
You see the hand right there? It's been
Uh-huh.
split in two or three places. If you see my thumb, my forefinger has been cut there. So the only thing that I had that I could use was my little finger on my other hand. And
Yeah.
what you're
Man.
reading, I'm showing you. And,
Yes,
and
sir.
and the fact of the matter is, when you see this, and you go back to high school when you were learning how to differentiate this situation from that situation, and you're all in the science room, and so you start using whatever available that the teacher says that you can use that will allow something on you or with you to stay alive, and that's what we were doing. All the different things that we could use to keep us alive, I was putting in my pocket to say, okay, when I get back to from the battle, I can give it back to him, and the doctor can sew it on. He tried, and he said it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. And he looked at my finger and he said, it ain't going to work. So you can throw that finger, and I don't care where you throw it, it ain't going to work because the time differential from the time you got shot was shot off and the time that you were in this fight. He said it was hours, it was days. I mean, you're falling in the dirt and dirt's in your pocket and all. How do you expect this part of your finger to be available to be put back on your hand? And he said it's just be you can use a BS that you want. And he said, look, we're not going to go there. And so the whole thing was you fight with what you got. You know, there was, I remember when our government was coming together, and I was trying to remember Cheney, who was a vice president, so forth, and with our government, and the fact that he used to always say, "You go to war with what you got," and if you can't go to war with what you got, you ought to get the hell out of Dodge because they were coming after you. And so you just learn those little things, and you got to do it in a way that makes sense to the people that are still on your side. And you have to make sure that you spread them out, train them correctly, because they know that they're going to be in a fight that you never expected. I can remember we were coming back, and it might be in a book there. I was sort of in charge with Wall, and we were walking by this little village, and this a Wall went up and asked the mama son some questions about, what was going on and who was there. And she said, "Oh, look, there's nobody here. I'm by myself. My family's gone," so forth and so on. We took about, I don't know, another 15 or 20 minutes, and Wall said, "We stop here." And I said, "Why the hell are we stopping here?" And he said, "You'll see." In about 20 minutes, that whole Viet Cong that she had been feeding came there for lunch. And so we had another fight right there. And the whole thing is, when you're in a situation like that, you had better be cognizant of the fact that everything around you is suspect. And that's the way I learned. Uh, and I didn't back away once I really felt strongly about it. But the other thing is, you have a chance to be with other soldiers, and you're not always the one that has the right answers. I can remember a couple, one was 18 and the other could have been 19, that somehow got into special forces by lying about their ages and all that. When they came across certain situations, they were the first to come and say, "Hey, sir, I don't know if that's going to work, and let me tell you why." And you have to listen to everyone, because if you don't, uh, you giving you putting everyone at a disadvantage. And so that's what we did. We worked together to make sure we were getting it right the second time, because the first time was right itself would be available to us.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the name of the game. And you're doing that from a training perspective, but also you're needing to do that in the moment, because it's hard to prepare yourself for different moments until they happen. So you can't really prepare yourself for what it's going to be like when you're wounded until you're wounded. You really can't prepare yourself for the feeling of we're about to be overrun until that process is kind of happening. But for you, and again, guys, you're going to have to get the book, Every Weapon I Had. There's so much more detail in the book. We're just barely flying over it right now. But there was a time during the battle, Colonel Davis, where you had an opportunity to leave the battlefield. So I actually want to read this section here. "I was relieved to see COL was in the chopper. 'God, I'm glad to see you,' I told the major. I explained to him the situation on the ground and that there were still men unaccounted for. 'I'm sending you out with the chopper,' COL shouted under the noise of the engine. 'I'm here to replace you. You need medical attention.' I was stunned. There was no way I could leave in the middle of a firefight. It would destroy the morale of the company. They would never trust me again. I had to stay. 'Sir, please don't do that to me,' I shouted. 'I'm not hurt that bad. I've got to get my guys out of this predicament. We have another airstrike on the way. I refuse to go.' There was another reason, a more personal one. The night before the operation, Brown had handed out candy cigars to all of us to celebrate his baby's birth. I had a responsibility as a commander to bring everyone in, but I also had a responsibility to Brown's wife and his new baby to make sure he got home. Cole could see how distraught the order made me, and he backed down. "You've got it," he yelled. "Good luck and God bless you." And he got back onto the helicopter. I crouched under the rotor wash and watched the helicopter return to Bong Song. So, again, hard for me as a civvy to read something like that because this is just stuff you read in military poetry. This is just stuff that you see in movies or whatever. But this is something that you actually experienced. You had a ticket out of there, but you didn't know where all of your men were. And this led to you saving Reinberg and Waugh and Brown, which, led to, later ramifications for your life and career in the military. But let's go back there, and then we could go to the bases, as it were, with Reinberg, Waugh, and Brown. What made you stay? Because you have internal constitution, you've got balls, you've got vigor, you got all those things, but you're injured now, right? You could go get cleaned up, get patched up, and all that, and maybe they could bring you back out. But that was just seemingly not even a consideration for you.
Well, what was really important was the fact that I had the three Americans, all in different positions, all part of the of our war, and I wanted to make sure that we could still rely on them because even though we had radios and stuff like that, if you're losing the leader that has helped you to get there, then you got a problem in terms of being able to take that the information and the people that you have on your side and put them to good use to keep you going while the war is going on. And so my thing was the best way I could do that is to go to the furthest person that was out there and get that person first, and that was Brown. And so I remember I'm at home plate. Now look at second base where it is, and you're moving around. Like the other thing is, and when you just say that, you think, well, this is not a problem. If you go to any place where dogs are allowed to run loose and do their thing, you're going to find you know what everywhere. And when you start crawling with your arms and all, you're going to have shit just everywhere. You might even swallow a little bit of it because you're trying to get to Brown as soon as you can because the shrubbery and all the other kind of things. The enemy still has positions there, and they're on one side, and this is why you call in for airstrikes and everything else to put them at a disadvantage while you're trying to move from there to the other. In your elbows, in your knees, I mean, they look like they were red something that in color because you got scratches and everything you can imagine with what you're crawling with, and it's with your elbows and your knees, and trying to be while you're once you get to Brown, trying to turn him over because his face is just saturated with blood, and he's got this uh, uh, bullet hole in his temple. And I can remember when I get there, he says, he recognized me and he says, "Sir, am I going to die?" And the first thing I thought about was, "No, you're not." But I said, "Don't worry, um, I'll be right here for you. I'm going to be here and we're going to get out of this thing." And once I said, "Not before me," he sort of relaxed a little bit. And then the whole thing was to get him on his, if you can picture that, to turn him over. He's been shot in the head now, okay? Blood is running profusely all over his body. When that happens, when I turn him over, his chest and everything else from the wound that he has in his head is just all blood. I mean, I couldn't even see the color of the uniform he was wearing. But once I do that, I turn him over and I put my arms under his arms and try to put them together so I could then start pulling them back. And we could take about 2 or 3 steps, and then I'd lose the group because there was so much blood on him. And we did this for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it took to get him back, to get him to the to 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 the helicopter to get him out there. And and the thing about it is, um, he would be in and out of talking to me about this or that, or about the baby and about the. I wasn't really sure initially if someone, or how did he find out that his wife had had a baby, because I had been out in the field, and I just took it upon myself that someone had told him that. And so you just work on that assumption, because you don't want to have an argument when you're trying to pull a guy back to safety. And so the whole thing was to keep him as calm and collected as possible while we're moving from point A to point B. The other thing is, when you're wounded like that, your body, your body will allow itself to come to some kind of semi-normal position. And when I say that, I'm talking about breaking wind and doing all kinds of other things while you're trying to pull him back. Now think about that. You're pulling him back. When you're pulling him back, you're also pulling him back whatever uh, thing he might be doing with his body. And we would laugh every couple of times. I can remember him even saying, "Well, this is what you get if you come and get me," with just making farts and all this other kind of stuff. And you want to say, "Wait till we get back. I'm gonna kick your ass. It's just as sure as God made little green apples." And so, we're talking about this while we're moving, and it really took up some time. And let me tell you why. When you have a person like that that's wounded, and you say something about breaking wind and all that, it gives him a chance to be Bob Hope or
Yeah.
someone else, where he can just say something funny, and you have to respond to it. And and it goes on and it helps because he has to think longer about saying something back to you as you do to respond whatever he's saying. I mean, and you're just pulling him back, and every time you would lose one, he said, "What's wrong? You have ice cream on your fingers, or something like that." And I'm trying to still move him, and he's coming up with all these smart remarks, and we just go there. And I'll tell you, you might think it's not that far, maybe 180. But 90 feet to one base, so that's 180, whatever it might be, for going. And it took it 2.5 hours to get from second base to home plate. And the whole thing is that he's in and out of consciousness. And once he wants to get up, and he wants to use the bathroom. I mean, all kinds of things that he might be saying that you're saying, "Yeah, I hear you saying, we'll do that in a minute." But the whole thing is to keep moving, not to stop, because we know once we stop, if they have a if the enemy can see you anywhere, he's gonna start firing at you. And so that whole thing is sort of comedic situation where people are laughing at the same time. We're trying to do the right thing to get him back, to get him out of the way. And as you well know, after all that trouble, and 2.5 days later, he passes. The whole thing is that you're just doing what you can to move him around. And the same thing with Wall when he was shot 5 or 6 times in the leg, and in the and in his ankle, and I mean, he had this conversation with God that was just unbelievable, uh, about what about me? I've been shot at. What's going to happen to me? And things like that. And it's amazing when you get in a situation like that, how narrow your thinking is. About everything else is out the window. The only thing that's alive and well is his comments to you about what's happening to him, not you to him. Everything, well, you're okay, and and you can do anything. And I've been shot. No, I mean, you just have to turn that around. And it's one of those things. And I'll tell you, it does two things. Number one, it gives you something to talk about. But number two, it allows you to be in his mind in the fact that he knows that something's wrong with him and he needs to be helped. I mean, all these things are going on at the same time. But if you start talking about him, then you got a problem right here in River City because that brings it right to where you are. And right to where you are is you're in the middle of the battlefield and you're trying to move him. He's got blood everywhere. I mean, every time that you're pulling him and you lose grip, that means that you lost a few seconds about having your hands together, their claps together, so that you can keep them together, so you can keep pulling him. Uh, every time you take a step with the heel of your shoe. And it just goes on. And the thing about it, you know what's going on around you. But the thing that's most important is what do I do with Brown? How do I get him back? And finally that happens. And then the next thing is what's next? Who's next? And then the next person I think was Wall when I went to get him. And then lastly it was Romberg who had brought the ammunition in and had put it on the ground and stood up and got 2 rounds right to his chest. So I mean, all these things are going on, and the thing about it is, you can't forget what's happening, and you can't take your mind off of the immediate things that are going on. The war's still going on. You still have two people out there, Wall and Reinberg, and you're getting air support, and you're getting support from the some of the other availability of American hardware, and so you just have to keep going and you can't stop. And I tell you, Reinberg was about 6'1", maybe a little bit taller. When he got shot, when he dropped put the ammunition on the ground, when he turned, he turned into me, and when he turned into me, he knocked me down. He was on top, and I'm trying to figure out how the fuck do I get out of this, and he's not moving because he's been shot. He's not saying a doggone thing. And so I'm trying to turn him over so that I could get out and move him back to get to the aircraft. So all this stuff is going on. And then Wall is saying, what about me? There's that sniper up there and he keeps shooting me. And I said, where is he? And he tells me. So I go around and try to get behind where I think Wall has said the sniper is, and finally I get a shot and a good shot at him, and we get him. But the whole thing is he's putting bullets into his leg because his leg is the only thing in that buffalo rub that's available.
Yeah.
I can't get that leg down. And so his leg is up there and his foot's up there. And that sniper is just, I mean, he put 5 or 6 rounds in that one leg, that right leg. And we couldn't get that right leg into the buffalo rub. All it is a buffalo rub is a big hole. You know, you're trying to get its body all out of range for the sniper not to be able to shoot it again. So all this stuff is going on, and then what do you do? Do you stop the war and say, "Hey, let's take a break, and when we come back, we can be where we were"? No, It doesn't work that way. And the other thing is, I don't care what you tell me, a situation like that requires immediate attention. You got to do something right away. And you got to either lie, cheat, or you got to do something. And when a guy who is about 200 and I don't 10, 12 pounds, and you're about 160 or whatever, and he's on top of you, and he starts bleeding on you, and you're trying to move him off to put a rope around him so that you could, once you get close enough to the aircraft, to throw it to them so they can pull him up on the aircraft. All this stuff is going across your mind, and you got to do it all at one time. And so it's this thing about just doing it. And the other thing is, you never get into to the situation where you say, "Hey, you're dying," or "You're this," or that. That's not part of the conversation. And and when you get to the helicopter, how do you get him? There's a distance between the helicopter itself and where the person is have been shot. If you've got to put him, get him on the helicopter, there's going to be a portion of that time when his whole body is exposed to the enemy. And so, what do you do then? How do you fight? And you're trying to get you're talking with aircraft and you a fighter, the 105 fighters and so forth and so on, and just to get him up there. I mean, a guy that big is going to be, and you finally get the rope under him so that you can pull him up, and you got two or three guys inside that helicopter trying to pull him up, and the thing is that the pilot of the helicopter said, "No, you keep firing. Don't stop firing. If you do, we're dead." And so what do? You do exactly what he says. And so, his life is depending on trying to get the hell out of Dodge. And if he can't get out of Dodge, then nobody's going to get out of Dodge. And so all this stuff is going on. And then the last guy, you know, Wall just seems to have this conversation with God. What about me? I mean, he sort of loses his consciousness about what's going on, and it turns to what about me? You know, why am I here? That guy is firing at me. He's got all these rounds in my leg. Uh, what do we do? What do I do? And he spotted the guy now, and he tells me exactly where he is. And I get my weapon. We go around to the other side, and I have an M1, and I get a good shot. And I'm not really sure I hit him, but let me tell you what happened there. When I get that shot off, I could hear a clunk of limbs and everything else that if you had something that high up, you would make. And that happened, and I'm still trying to make sure that I got. So I stay there for a few minutes, and I don't move or anything else until I am pretty positive that I've shot the guy, or the enemy, or the sniper, because Wall is calling this guy everything but a child of God, and I'm trying um, to find out exactly where it was, and finally we were able to pinpoint where it was, and the only thing that really helped us is the fact that there was a lot of leaves in that tree, and in order for him to get his shot off, he had to create a fire, a way to fire a weapon uh, at Reinberg. I mean, at Wall that could hit him, because he had to be at least 100, maybe 200 feet away. But he had a good shot because he had a great weapon, and that weapon is somewhere in our archives. But he had a good shot at it. And so once I see the hole, I shoot the hole and not him. I want to be very honest about that. I see the hole, I shoot the hole and not him. And finally, I hear this. clatter and everything. And you could see that he must have been had some weight with him because he went through the limbs on the tree, and finally it's just quiet. And then we go back and take care of him. But the other thing is, and he takes a shot at me once I shoot at him. And so all this stuff is going on. And the other time, and the war's still going on in the other place. The war's still going on in the other place. So
Right. That's
and as soon as you hear the clunk, and you wait a few minutes, and you go back, and you don't feel a shot coming towards you, we got him. And once we get our person out, and he is still bleeding, and what there's just an extremely amount of blood. This is everywhere. I mean, the tires and one of the wings, or not the wings, but yeah, the wings on the aircraft. Everything's red. Everything's red. And when finally when we take off, you see blood up in the air. It was it is that heavy, that that just for a couple of seconds, the wind and everything else, when the aircraft takes off, you could see the blood, coming off almost like it's a painting. But it only lasted for a couple of 3 seconds, and then they're gone. And then we have to take care of the other person. But the whole thing is, you don't want to get over excited about the people that are wounded. You got to take them one at a time, and the fighting is still going on. And then, believe it or not, I go back to the war. We go back, and Colonel Cole's there, and so forth and so on. And he has already told me that he wanted me to leave, and I told him I wasn't going to leave, and so all this stuff is going on. But in the middle of a fight like that, it's almost like you're in a situation where you're in an orchestra, and all of a sudden there's a moment of silence, and so you've got all this stuff going on, and you just have to, you know, put it in some kind of situation where you can do one thing at a time and get it done, and get ready for the next. At least that was the way I saw it. I might have been wrong. Nobody's told me that was right or wrong. I just did it.
well, I mean, at this point, because of your actions, that's why Reinberg, Waugh, and Brown were able to get off the battlefield alive. And, that wasn't the end for you. I mean, there was more fighting for you. There was a guy that had snuck up on you after all this. You talk about that in the book. But eventually the battle does come to an end. You are evacuated back to base. That's not the last battle of your life. You have other battles where you're wounded, and you take some rounds and some different things like that. And then I know we're running a little short on time. So again, guys, you have to get the book, Every Weapon I Had. You go into a lot of detail. You talk about the public outcry against Vietnam, some of the protests when you got home, some of the names you recall, baby killer, a woman spitting in your mouth, and all those types of things. You spend some time talking about the transition kind of out of the military, or first of all, off the battlefield, where you're still in the military, and then transitioning out of the military, and you get into a lot of detail on your thoughts there. But, for anyone that knows your story, and obviously it's the subtitle of the book, you received the Medal of Honor. And so people might be thinking, oh, there's probably a picture of Colonel Davis with, either Kennedy or maybe Nixon or maybe Carter or maybe Reagan. No, the pictures of you and Joe Biden, because it was just in the last few years that you actually received the Medal of Honor. And so that's where we'll kind of park here at the end of the interview today, is talk to us about the process, because obviously there was stories of your packet being lost, and it was shuffled over here, and it got messed up over there. But there was a groundswell of support that you had going back to this battle to be like, no, these actions were so clearly recognized that day as being worthy of the highest military honor that we have, which is the Medal of Honor. But it wasn't until just the last administration before the second Trump administration where you actually received that honor. So let's just talk about the process of getting you back in front of the committee or whoever makes that decision, and then all the way up to the day where you go to the White House and you're actually presented with it.
Well, what happened there was the fact that I wasn't really sure of what they were talking about the Medal of Honor. Um, I was more concerned about the people, especially um, David Morgan, who was with me when we went across the battlefield and he was killed. And to my I can remember Munger and some others coming to talk with me, and they were saying, I can remember the first thing he said, and then he shut up, was, well, that's over now. And I said to him, what the fuck do you mean, sir? And he said, I'm sorry, because he knew that I was talking about Morgan, that Morgan had been killed and that thing. And the other thing that he didn't say anything, but someone else did. When they finally, and I don't know if I've said it to anyone before or not, finally when they uh, that helicopter that we were in and Morgan was killed, I can remember getting shot from one door that was open where Morgan was, and had falling down. I was holding him when that one round was I could see coming, not see coming, but I could hear the flash or see the flash. That and then getting shot from that one door up in the air across the helicopter to where I fell on the other side. And the only thing that kept me alive was that the door gunner on the other side had been killed and was blocking the passageway. That's the only thing that saved my life. And at that time, I was unconscious, and I can remember someone telling me that there were so many bullets in me that the surgeon, wherever hospital, I never did find out the hospital, that there were so many bullets in me that the surgeon told the people on the aircraft, unscrew the seat and bring the seat in, leave the seat there and bring him in the seat back into the hospital. And that's how I got in the hospital. They took the, and this was all told to me because I wasn't available to do it on my own. But the nurse said, "Yeah, we unscrewed that seat from the chopper, and we brought the seat in and everything else into the hospital with you in it, and that's the way you got in the hospital. So that's the way I got in the hospital. And
And so,
the thing of go
go
ahead.
ahead, please.
No, I was going to say war is hell. War is so different from almost anything you can do in your regular life. I mean, you do not control very much in a war. I mean, you're fighting and all that, but what's happening is the elements are controlling you. And if you don't believe that, and I can remember uh, the company commander coming back and he says, you know what, that's that was probably the dumbest thing I've ever said. And I said, because I was still pissed off, you're fucking A, you're fucking right. When he mentioned that Morgan or David hadn't, he's dead now. We need to talk about the living. And I was really pissed about that comment. So anyhow, that's what I wanted to say there because you just never know. And the thing about it is, not once during that whole period of time did I think that we weren't going to make it. I just thought that we were good enough to make it. The only other thing that came out was after the fact that they had been saying there was another guy who was the first black to receive to be called a black in in the war, and he came and saw me, and I'm going to try to find out because he made a disposition to say that I was the first black to be in special forces, and if I can get a copy of that, only because you and I have gotten to be good friends here, that I would send it to you so you could do whatever the hell you want. But that's the only other thing, and I'm just saying that to you because just a conversation you and I have been having over here. But I just learned a lot, and now the other thing is. I had a couple of guys that were from Mississippi and a couple of guys that were from Alabama. And I told them early on, don't call me any names and I won't call you any names and we can get this thing done the best way we can because we're all Americans and I'm not a nigger, I'm not a this, I'm not a that. And don't call me any of that and we can get along just fine because we're all in this thing together and we all are going to end up one way or the other together. And so that was the last thing I can remember saying. But one of the first things that I can remember thinking, because it just is that way, you never can really tell in a situation like that how the hell it's going to end up. I mean, it's like shooting dice and you don't know if you're getting 7 or 11. You don't know if it's one snake eyes or what. I mean, it's still up in the air, and you're waiting for it to land, and people want the results of whatever that might be when he hits the wall and spins around before you. It's either two ones or whatever it might be. So that's just the way it is.
Well, Colonel Davis, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to hear about your story. And I mean, I feel like I got to know you through your book. Again, the level of detail in storytelling here is substantial. But for now, that's all for me. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest?
Well, one of these days when it's all over, I sure like to have lunch with you.
Hey, I'll take it. So where are you located? Because I think we can make that happen, sir.
Well, I'm located in Virginia. Uh, we can still talk some more about it. But I just like talking to you. I think you're a smart guy. You've been very honest with me. Uh, it's not one of these, oh, well, you weren't there. I hear that you were there, but I'm honestly, you weren't there. Let me just tell you this. Biden had 19 writers, I was told, that were following everything that I did, and he wanted to make sure that the information. And I have that. Did you get a white book?
Yes, sir.
There's a-
Yes.
That's what he had those 19 people doing. They followed me around or for a long time just to make sure that we had everything correct. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, and
So
I've read enough military history and military memoirs, and I found out about some guys that maybe embellished or lied about some things, and they kind of have a stink to it. You know what I mean? And kind of like earlier, whenever you were making the comment, hey, courage doesn't really have a color, courage doesn't have a race. Well, heroism doesn't either. And that's one thing I called you a hero off air before we got started. And you seem a little uncomfortable with that title, but it's a title that fits. And, sir, again, I'm just so thankful for you. I'm thankful for your service to this country that I love so much and for your service to your men. And hopefully, this isn't the last time we talk.
you got that one right. Please stay well. And I tell you, every time I would see someone, they ask me where I'm from. I would say I'm from America. You take care of your family, and you and I will get together later on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Colonel Paris Davis. But before we let you go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. So I've got a link to where you can buy your copy of every weapon I had. And then I've got a link to his webpage, which basically says, okay, via, army.mil, what the things that he did was and some of the things that he was recognized for. And then I've also got a video where you can watch where he received the Medal of Honor. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.